mountains bear prosperity for the people, and the hills in righteousness.
May he defend the cause of the poor with the evil, give deliverance to the needy, and crush the oppressor.
May he live while the sun endures, and as long as the moon, throughout all generations.
May he be like rain that falls on the lone grass, like showers that water the earth.
In his days may righteousness flourish, and peace abound, till the moon be no more.
May he have dominion from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth.
May his foes bow down before him, and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and of the isles render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts.
May all kings fall down before him, all nations serve him.
For he delivers the needy when they call, the poor and those who have no helper.
He has pity on the weak and the needy.
And saves the lives of the needy.
From oppression and violence he redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight.
Long may he live. May gold of Sheba be given to him. May prayer be made for him continually, and blessings invoked for him all the day.
May there be abundance of grain in the land. May it wave on the tops of the mountains. May its fruit be like Lebanon.
And may they blossom forth in the cities like the grass of the field.
May his name endure forever. His fame continue as long as the sun. May people bless themselves by him. All nations call him blessed.
The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
So I was thinking about our prayer time and thinking about 2020 vision. This is 2020, is it not? And it's time for 2020 vision, a song of my childhood. And maybe some of you, it's your childhood too, comes to mind. Can you hear it? Anybody recognize that? Anybody have the tenor voice they had when they first heard it? I do not. But let's see if we can sing I Can See Clearly Now as we go into our time of prayer. I see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that wrap me blind. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. We'll make it now, the pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Let's hear the tenor voices. Look all around, there's nothing but blue skies. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue skies. with 2020 vision, I see, hindsight is so helpful to what we can see. And I want in this prayer time for you to be thinking and maybe to share aloud with where in 2019 you saw in 2020 vision love being offered and love being accepted. Now, this is an internal conversation, and you may see that, and you want to think about that inside yourself, but not share it, and that is good. But if there is something you would like to share, love being offered and love being accepted. And the same question around duty, somebody offering love as a part of their duty, and it being accepted, and as a way of service. We offer love in so many ways. What comes to mind with you, looking back at this past year?
My kids were so proud of themselves getting the food for the food pantry. And they really, you could see it in them, and they were living it, and it was good.
The 5th grade, for those of you who don't know, from the Willow School, and Skip is the teacher there, they offer every year, every 5th grade class does service. And the Christmas packages, as well as the Thanksgiving, and Stuff the Bus.
There's that one I was thinking about, but
Yeah.
they like serving. They
Yeah.
like, and they find joy, and I don't know, they see it, they get it.
And what did you see about people accepting their gifts?
I don't know, following people accepting them. You mean like?
Yeah, just that not only the bus gifts, but then when they were working to help people get their stuff to the car.
Right. And one of the kids at Stuff the Bus said to his mom, because, with all the people, this is a 5th grade boy, so this meant something to me, but, because he got it, but it was like, he goes, when I see the generosity of people, I know there's more good in the world than bad.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you, Skip. What have you seen in 2019? Looking back, where did you see love given and love accepted?
When the fire happened up north and south and east and west, that the community came together to support and help.
The community giving. And I see a lot of people who are accepting those gifts as well. It's not just giving, there's also accepting. There's a give and a receive in our lives. We give and give and give, and we receive and receive and receive. And it's a part of the process of life. If you can't receive, you really have trouble giving. It's very hard. It becomes manipulative. Giving and receiving. And one of our things with the fire recovery group is working with people and trying to help them find their ways of receiving. Because in Alaska, people can be stubborn. It's new to you, I know. And can really only want things in certain ways. And so a part of the gift is figuring out what way is it that you want it? How can I help you in your life? Yes.
I have a simple one, which is our skate night. We do it at school every 3rd Friday of the month during the school year.
Mm-hmm.
The Lions Club puts it on with a lot of heartache sometimes, but the appreciation is much there on the top of the plate.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of thanks from that, and the parents really like having the opportunity to give their kids a night out to do something.
And it is a fun event. And the school and the Lions Club make that available. And boy, the energy in that room. And the kids who are learning how to skate is really cool. Though most are not learning how to skate, is my observation. They're,
For improvement.
she accepted it?
I'm not sure yet, I haven't heard it.
Okay, all right.
It might have scared her, 'cause I heard that she's afraid of Santa Claus.
Yeah. You really do have to be careful with people, but what a wonderful gift. Thank you. Thank you for that. And congratulations.
Well, thanks.
When I was looking at 2019 in review and was looking at the year and on the internet and just how it was done, the press only really, it was, I don't know, 100, month by month, there were several hundred listings given for the whole 2019. And there might have been 10 out of that were positive. The rest were all negative. One of the things I like about I Can See Clearly Now is that it says, you know what? There's actually some positive in this world that I can live in. I see a lot of people very depressed and have reason to be depressed. Things are tough. But yet, the message I think that we can share is that there is life as well, and there's love. And we keep offering it, and we keep receiving it, no matter what. I invite you to breathe deeply, relax, and simply be in God's presence for this next few seconds. Let's sing I Can See Clearly Now one more time, just the last verse. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. I apologize to those of you who are younger, and that song maybe wasn't in your world, but I can even remember where I was the first time I heard it, and it was a couple of years ago. Yes, just a couple. Our gospel today is from chapter 2 of the Gospel of Matthew, and it's time to move our wise men to the manger. All right. I invite you to stand as you are able and out of respect for the reading of the gospel. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in the territory of Judea during the rule of King Herod, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. They asked, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east, and we've come to honor him." When King Herod heard this, he was troubled, and everyone in Jerusalem was troubled with him. He gathered all the chief priests and the legal experts and asked them where the Christ was to be born. They said, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what the prophet wrote. You, Bethlehem, land of Judah, by no means are you least among the rulers of Judah. Because From you will come one who governs, one who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and found out from them the time the star had first appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go, search carefully for the child. When you found him, report to me so that I too may go and honor him." When they heard the king, they went, and look, the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with Mary, his mother. Falling to their knees, they honored him. Then they opened their treasure chest and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, because they were warned in a dream not to return to Herod. They went back to their own country by another route. A word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Please be seated. So one of the things that's kind of cool is Beth and Deanna brought this to share. So where did you get it, and what is it?
Frankincense from Dubai, United Arab Emirates.
All right. And we were trying to read up on frankincense, and it is an incense that is still used today as an incense. So I'm going to pass it around. I think you need to probably, don't do this, to crush one to get the real aroma of it, and maybe even heat it. I know in the Catholic Church, incense is heated, and it's a different mixture, and they do use frankincense. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, so what? Let's first, before I ask you what day is it, let's just say Happy New Year to each other. Turn to somebody and tell them Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Yeah, Happy New Year. All right. Okay, so what day is it? It's Happy Undecoration Day. Right, okay, that's it. What day is this? Is it the 7th? It's the 5th of January, 2020. Okay. What other day is it? It's the day before Epiphany, and so we're celebrating Epiphany today. The coming of the kings and the light, okay? There's another thing that it is.
Yes.
All right. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love came to me.
12th day of Christmas.
Oh, 12 drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, 10 lords a-leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 lids a million. You got it. You understand. This is the 12th day of Christmas. Turn to somebody and wish them a happy 12th day of Christmas. It's the 12th day of Christmas. It is. One of the things that Barry Joseph School I've learned is that in the old believers community, Christmas Day is celebrated on the 7th of January. So they haven't had Christmas yet. So they'll be out of school this week later for their time for that. Okay, so we celebrate the kings on Epiphany, and the kings, you heard that story, they come and they bear gifts, and you know the joke, if it had been women, they would have brought something practical, but the men are bringing these symbolic gifts. Now, we don't know how many kings there were, it's just that's our tradition. There are 3, and we've even given names to those 3, which you're going to discover a little later. One of the things I wanted to just bring out in just a sentence, or maybe it's a paragraph, did you notice that these followers of God who go to worship the child go home, and they are still what they were, Zoroastrians? They are studiers of the gods, of the lights in the sky. One of the things that Matthew does not suggest is an exclusionary Christianity. Now, there are other suggestions, but in Matthew, you can be with God without being in a Christian community. So I wanted to bring that out. I just wanted you to hear that. That's not what we're talking about, but it is in our sermon. It is in our scripture today. But there's a book that you may know about. Has anybody ever heard of Henry Van Dyke? Henry Van Dyke wrote a story that's called The Other Wise Man. Do you know this story? Oh, you don't. Oh, gosh. It's not in our library, so you can't get it, but you can get it by asking for it. They can order it in for you. It's a little bit archaic language. Henry Van Dyke writes in an older era, but it is a fabulous story. I'm going to share with you a adaptation that's shorter and in modern language that's called The Fourth Wise Man, and it's based on the story of Henry Van Dyke, and it's written by Susan Summers, and it was in our library, so I am glad about that. So I'm going to take the next 10, 12 minutes and read to you a story. One of the things about teaching in elementary is I read a lot of stories. So just kind of relax, let it be. This is not really a children's story. It's really an adult story. In the days when Augustus Caesar ruled the Roman Empire and King Herod reigned in Jerusalem, there lived in the city of Ecbatana, among the mountains of Persia, a man named Artaban. From the roof of his house, Artaban could look out over rising battlements to the hill where the emperor's palace glittered above the city like a jewel. Around his house grew a wonderful garden filled with flowers and fruit trees watered by rushing streams and made musical by countless birds. High above the tallest trees in the garden stood a tower, and from its window a lamp often shone late into the night, for it was here that Artaban worked. He was a follower of the faith of Zoroaster, for studying the eternal struggle between the forces of good and evil, and exploring the secrets of nature, above all, the secrets of the night sky. Artaban had three friends, Casper, Melchior, and Balthazar. For all four men, knowledge of the stars was the highest form of learning. One spring night, the four companions were looking up at the sky when they observed a new star shining, more brightly than any they had ever seen. The men knew from their studies that this star signified the birth of a great teacher who was to be born among the Jews. There and then they decided to follow the star. They arranged to meet up together at a place far away by the temple of the seven spheres in Babylon. And from there they would set out with a caravan of supplies and follow the star to Jerusalem to pay homage to the child. Quickly, Artaban arranged his affairs. He sold his beautiful house with its fragrant gardens, and he bought 3 jewels, a sapphire, a ruby, and a pearl, to carry as a tribute to the newborn child. On the eve of his departure, he said farewell to his old father and knelt to receive his blessing. Before dawn, even before the first bird had awoken, Artaban went down to the stable where Vasta, his favorite horse, stood saddled and bridled in her stall, shaking her bit and pawing at the ground impatiently. He swung himself into the saddle and was soon swiftly riding westward. He had to reach the temple of the seven spheres on an appointed night, and the journey was long and hard. Artaban knew Vasta's strength and pushed forward, riding late into the night and starting long before sunrise every morning. Each evening, as soon as the sun sank behind the hills, the bright new star shone down on him. Finally, after 10 days and 10 nights, he saw before him the great walls of Babylon. At last, in 3 hours' time, he would be at the temple of 7 spheres. As they trotted past a grove of date palms outside the city walls, Vasta gave a soft whinny and then stood stock still before a dark object lying in the shadow. Artaban dismounted. In the dim starlight, he could see the figure of a man lying across the road. He leaned down to touch the man's head. The man gave a ghostly sigh and clutched at Artaban's robe with long, bony fingers. This man needed help, Artaban knew, but how could he stop tonight of all nights? God of truth and purity, Artaban prayed, direct me in the holy path, the way of wisdom, which you know better than any mortal. Then he fetched water, mixing it with some of the healing herbs that he always carried. Slowly he poured the liquid into the sick man's parched mouth. Hour after hour he poured, a little at a time, until the man's strength returned. "Who are you?" he asked, "and why have you brought back my life?" "I am Artaban of Ecbatana, and I'm going to Jerusalem in search of one who is to be born King of the Jews. I dare not stay with you any longer, for my friends are waiting and may depart without me. But see, here is all I have left of bread and wine, and here is a potion of healing herbs." The sick man raised his trembling hand solemnly to heaven. "May the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob bless you and bring you peace. Now take heed, the Messiah will not be born in Jerusalem, but in Bethlehem of Judea. May the Lord bring you in safety to that place, because you have had pity on me and saved my life." It was already near dawn. Artaban rode quickly across the silent plain, but when he reached the temple of the 7 spheres, he could no longer trace his friends. Then, by the edge of a terrace, he saw a little stack of bricks, and under it a piece of parchment. He picked it up and read, we can delay no longer. We go to find the King of Kings." Artaban stared out across the desert. "How can I reach Judea?" he asked himself, "with no food and a tired horse. I must return to Babylon, sell my sapphire, buy camels and food for the journey. I may never catch up with my friends. Only God knows whether I shall miss the King of Kings, because I stopped to help a dying man." So Artaban returned to Babylon, where he sold his glittering sapphire and his beloved horse Vazda in exchange for a caravan of camels. He set out again across the dreary desert. Dark ledges of rock rose up around him like the bones of ancient monsters. Shifting hills of treacherous sand skirted his route. By day, a fierce heat blistered the earth so that no living thing could move. By night, jackals prowled and barked in the distance, and an icy chill fell over the dunes. But he pressed on, faithfully following the bright new star until, as the sick man had told him, it shone above the village of Bethlehem in the land of Judea. Artaban drew near the village full of hope. Now at last he could give his pearl and his ruby to the king. But the streets were deserted, and he wondered whether the men had gone up to the hill pastures to bring down their sheep. Then from the open door of a stone cottage, he heard someone singing softly. He entered and found a young woman singing her baby to sleep. Yes, the woman told him, 3 strangers from the east had appeared a few days earlier. They had said that a star had guided them to the place where Joseph of Nazareth was lodging with his wife and her newborn son, and they had paid great reverence to the child and given him many gifts. But she went on, the travelers have disappeared again, and they say the man from Nazareth has fled to Egypt with his family. Now there seems to be a spell over the village. People even say that Roman soldiers are coming to enforce a new tax, and the men have driven our flocks and herds high up into the hills to escape it. Artaban listened to her gentle voice and the baby reached up to touch him. Suddenly there came a noise of wild confusion in the streets, a shrieking and wailing of women's voices, a clashing of swords, and a desperate cry. The soldiers of Herod, they are killing our children. The young woman's face went white with terror. Clutching her baby to her breast, she crouched in the darkest corner, covering with a robe. Artaban strode over to the doorway, blocking it. When the soldiers reached the cottage, Artaban summoned their captain and said, "I am alone here, and I will give you this jewel if you will leave me in peace." Then he showed the ruby, glistening in his palm like a great drop of blood. The captain's eyes widened with greed, and he grabbed the jewel. "March on!" he cried. And as the soldiers left, Artaban quietly prayed, "God of truth, forgive my lie. I have said the thing that is not to save the life of a child. And now 2 of my gifts are gone. Shall I ever see the King of Kings?" But from the shadows behind him came the woman's voice, saying, "Because you have saved my little one, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord give you peace now and always." Artaban left with the woman's blessing, and made his way to Egypt, asking everywhere for news of the family from Bethlehem. But he could find no trace of them. By now the star had vanished from the night sky, and he had no idea where to continue his search. So he went to the wise old Hebrew rabbi to seek advice. "My son," said the rabbi, "our scriptures foretold that the King of Kings would be despised and rejected by men. He will not be found in a palace, nor among the rich and powerful. If you seek him, look among the poor and the lowly, the sorrowful and the sick." The years passed, and Artaban traveled on, always searching in the poorest places for the family from Bethlehem. They passed through towns where people were crying with hunger. He passed through cities where they were dying of plague. And though he found no King of Kings to worship, he found many people to help. Wherever he went, he fed the hungry and clothed the naked. He healed the sick, and he visited those in prison. And his years went by more swiftly than a weaver's shuttle that darts back and forth through the loom, while the web grows and the invisible pattern is completed. From time to time, he would stop and take out his pearl, the last of his gifts, and as he gazed on it, he would wonder whether he would ever meet the King of Kings. 33 years had passed since Artaban had seen the star and set out on his journey. Now, worn and weary, he traveled to Jerusalem to make one final search. He arrived during the season of Passover, and the city was thronged with people who had come for the feast. But this year, there was a strange sense of foreboding in the air. All around Artaban, sandals clattered and thousands of bare feet shuffled over the stones as the crowds were swept along to the Damascus gate. "What is happening?" asked Artaban. "Haven't you heard?" replied a young man. "There is going to be a crucifixion. 2 robbers are to be crucified, and another man, a man called Jesus of Nazareth. They say he has said and done many wonderful things, and everyone loves him greatly. But the priest and the elders say he must be killed, because he calls himself the Son of God." Then Artaban knew this must be the King of Kings, for whom he had been searching all these years. His heart thumped and his mind raced. Perhaps if he offered his pearl to the Roman governor Pontius Pilate, he might save the man's life. He hurried toward the Damascus gate, but just beyond the entrance to the guardhouse, a troop of soldiers came down the street, dragging a young girl with a torn dress and disheveled hair. As Artaban paused to look at her, she broke away from the hands of her tormentors and threw herself at his feet. "Have pity on me," she cried. "Save me. My father was a follower of Zoroaster, and I see from your dress that you are of the same faith. Now my father is dead, and I am to be sold as a slave to pay for his debts. Please help me. Artaban looked on the woman and on the girl and trembled. For a third time, he had to choose between keeping his jewel as a gift for the King of Kings or surrendering it to save a fellow human being. Yet he knew that to rescue this helpless girl would be a true deed of love. Artaban took his priceless pearl from its pouch and placed it in the girl's hand. Here is your ransom, daughter. It is the last of the treasures I was keeping for the King of Kings, who is now to be crucified. As he spoke, the sky grew black and tremors ran through the street, which heaved like someone in pain. Houses rocked, stones fell and crashed into the street. Dust clouds filled the air. The soldiers fled in terror, reeling like drunken men, and Artaban and the girl took refuge beside the wall of the guardhouse. The earth gave one final shudder, and a heavy tile, loosened from the roof, fell and struck Artaban on the temple. As the girl bent over him, fearing that the old man was dead, there came a voice through the darkness, very small and still, like music sounding from a distance. The voice said, "Peace be with you, Artaban. When I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in distress, you comforted me. As often as you did these things for the least of my children, you did them for me." A calm radiance lit up Artaban's face, and a long last sigh of relief left his lips. His journey was ended. At last, he had found his king. Isn't that a powerful story?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of liberties with the Gospel of Matthew. But it really is about the truth that the Gospel of Matthew shares. For it is in the Gospel of Matthew where we are told to go and wherever we serve the poor, the marginalized, the hurt, then we are serving the King of Kings. We are serving Jesus. 2020 vision is not about eyeglasses. It's not about how well your optometrist says you see. 2020 vision is about seeing God in the midst of your life and serving that God. Giving and taking, giving and receiving. 2020 vision is about your commitment to discipleship of Jesus the Christ. Christina's going to lead you in a covenant that is in your insert, on your insert there. This is a covenant in the Wesleyan tradition. John Wesley, 300 years ago, wrote this. And then later in our service, just before we have communion, we're going to have an opportunity for anyone who would like to join the church, to become a member here, who maybe that would be something that God is calling them to do. You'll have that opportunity later.
You'll find the covenant prayer in your bulletin. A covenant prayer in the Wesleyan tradition. I am no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Rank me with whom you will. Put me to do. Put me to suffering. Let me be employed for you, or laid aside for you, exalted for you, or
United Methodist Church to do so. If you'll look in the insert just below the covenant prayer there, I want to read to you this, which I think is very important that we remember this is part of who we are about. God loves us no matter who we are or what we have done, and God is not through with any of us yet. No matter who you are, there is a place for you at Willow United Methodist Church, a place to belong, a place to become, and a place to make a difference. Here you will find warm, supportive people who know firsthand the struggles and joys of living. We understand that each person journeys a unique path with God. We trust that each person is his or her own expert on that journey. Therefore, instead of teaching a new set of rules for people to follow, we offer to walk alongside as together we discover the new creation God yearns for us to be. We believe that Jesus' self-giving love reveals God's heart. We believe that his self-giving love is the way, the truth, and the life for all who are called into relationship with Jesus. Our Sunday school, I'm going to skip on down. Let's go to the next paragraph. You will be loved and challenged here as followers and disciples of Jesus. We expect to serve the community where we live as Jesus works to break down the walls that divide people one from another. We strive to confront the walls dividing us, whether they be economic, race, class, education, gender, or anything else. We do not expect a perfect world, but we do know that Jesus accompanies us as we together do our best to make it a more just one. If you're looking for a community of Jesus that will love you and hold you dear, as well as make a difference in your community, we invite you to join us here at Willow United Methodist Church. No matter who you are welcome. Is there anyone who would like to join the church today? I make this appeal on the lowest Sunday attendance that we have had in 3 years. Please know that it is always open. Any Sunday, anyone can join.